Greetings and welcome to the Destination Goa Trance podcast. We bring you in-depth interviews with artists, label people, and organizers from the golden age of the 90s to the modern era. My name is Tibus, and I'm here with the one and only Simon Peter.
Alright, let's talk about Goa Trance. It is a well-known fact that parties in our scene last from dusk till dawn and beyond. Influenced by psychedelic experiences, this music takes the listener on a long journey throughout the night that usually has euphoric and blissful parts, but also darker and more twisted and sinister episodes sometimes. Although these days it's not always the case, true to form Goa parties still follow this night and day cycle in the music. Tibus, do you prefer night or daytime for dancing at parties?
Well, as I'm getting older, I like daytime more nowadays. But I've been to parties with awesome nighttime music played at the darkest of the night. Listening at home, well, it doesn't matter, I like both. What about you?
Yeah, I like those tracks that are neither completely dark nor light, but somehow have both elements in them. When it comes to full power dancing though, I love to be outdoors and I prefer the daytime. But I also like to be surprised by more twisted sounds during the night.
Our next guest is a master of both nighttime and daytime Goa trance. His latest double CD album represents those styles side by side. Peter, can you introduce our guest?
David Tingsgård from Sweden is also known as D-Dave, but he is most famous for his legendary project, The Battle of the Future Buddhas, which caused quite a stir on the scene with their now classic album, Twin Shark Fins, in 1998. It is a quite dark kind of Goa trance with a weird sense of humor. The album later also made an impact on the emerging dark and forest psytrance scenes. The Buddhas started as a band of friends, but it slowly became David's own solo project, with other members collaborating on a few tracks here and there. After the early Goa years, the project tapped into more darker realms in the early 2010s, and since then slowly becoming more and more melodic Goa trance again. The project's latest album, Cause, Principle, and One Eternal, came out in December of 2024. David also runs his own label, Schlabbaduerst Rekkords, where he focuses on the more nighttime-y Uppsala sound.
Without further ado, here's our interview with David. What were your first musical influences? So how did you become a musician? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm not really a musician. I'm not schooled in any instrument or anything, so I never really knew how to play. My first musical impressions were from the singer-songwriter duo Simon and Garfunkel from the 60s and 70s, you know. So I listened to that when I was 6 years old, and I thought it was really beautiful music. And then I listened to Kiss for a while, which is a bit shameful to admit. And then I started listening to electronic music, but I never played any instrument or anything. Just started with a computer in like 1988, 89, and then got some synths and started, just playing around and trying to make something interesting. So I was like 13, 14, and there were two other guys, Johan and Magnus, and we made music together. And later on, after a couple of years, we formed the Battle of the Future Buddhas.
Back then, I guess it wasn't the first psychedelic scene first. You just got interested in electronic music in general, but how did you find out about psychedelic and Goa trance scene at the time?
Yeah, exactly. We listened to electronic music in the 80s, like really hard electronic stuff, like electronic body music and bands like Skinny Puppy and stuff. Also some industrial bands, but in the late 80s, early 90s, we started to get interested in techno and dance music. And as techno got harder and harder and faster, it became more and more interesting, and it became more innovative than the electronic body music style. So we just gradually, me, my friends, and we just gradually grew into the techno dance scene and started listening to acts like Orbital and Prodigy and stuff like that. But it wasn't until 1994 when we got a mixtape from a friend, which was Goa Trance, that we found out about it, and we just fell in love right away. It was a mixtape with Man With No Name, Sugar Rush, and stuff like that. Amazing music. We're like, wow, what is this? We have to listen to this music. We have to find more. We have to go to Goa. We have to go to these parties. It was love at first sight.
Have you ever been to Goa actually? Or
Yes, 5 times.
did you go in the 90s already? Or okay.
Yeah, exactly. First time in 95, 96, and the second time 96, 97, and then 98, 99, those seasons.
And how was it back then? What was your impression of the scene there?
It was fantastic. There were so many people from all over the world, and so much amazing music being played at the parties, and the atmosphere was just amazing. I mean, you heard all those new tracks played like 6 months before they were released, and personally, I brought some DAT tapes with the music, Battle of the Future Buddhas, Twin Shark Fins, so I could make copy sessions with other DJs and artists. I met a lot of people and got so much good music. I still have like 100 tapes that I recorded and still listen to, and kind of I digitalized some of them, but I still find new stuff that, oh yeah, this track is so good, I have to record this one as well. So it was an amazing time. The beaches were nice. There weren't that many hotels or restaurants, but so you rented a place with some Indian local family, and you rented a bike, and then you just hung out and went to the beach and went to the parties in the night. So yeah, good stuff.
How was the scene in Sweden back then compared to that? I mean, in the early 90s, Goa was just started to grow there, I guess. The climate is rather different than in Goa, but
Yeah,
tell us how it was.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously only had outdoor parties from like May until September. The rest were clubs. In the beginning, we had some really, really nice clubs. In 94-ish, we had some fantastic clubs in Stockholm, which is where I went to party, but also Gothenburg, where I lived for 1 year, and got to know the people from Spiral Tracks and so on. But we had clubs every day, even in the weekend, in the weeks, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and on a Friday night you could go out to a pre-party club, and then you went clubbing, and then if you wanted, you could stay awake until Sunday or Monday if you wanted, and go to like clubs that were open all the time. And foreign DJs that came to Sweden, they thought it was just amazing. And we had this big place called Docklands, which was an amazing club with lots of big acts. And in the summer, we went to Örebro with Stone Age Records, who made parties there. They had some fantastic parties with really nice atmosphere. And and they went on from Friday to Sunday. But unfortunately, in maybe 97 or something, the cops started raiding all the parties and basically shut it down. And we have suffered from that ever since. So you can't make a big Goa Trance Festival in Sweden. And it's even hard to just rent a place to play Goa. So if you play techno or if you play trance, it's like, no, you can't do this. But if you play house, and then it's fine. But it was a good time for a while there in the 90s.
How did the Battle of the Future Buddhas come together? How did you guys meet and decide to create a band together?
Well, we've known each other for a long time. Me and Magnus, we have known each other since we were 6 years, and we met Johan in like 8th grade or something, and we shared a musical interest, and we started making this electronic music. So yeah, we were 13 years old. And then we started to get into the dance music scene and make dance music. And went to those parties in the forest, and I went to Goa. So yeah, after we heard this mixtape, we just had to make Goa Trance. And because we have this background in industrial music and like harder electronic music, we didn't feel like we had any boundaries. We could just make noise if we wanted to and make these weird warp sounds, and it was like something good for us. What was like, we said, oh, this sounds like Skinny Puppy. And Skinny Puppy is a band that is really industrial, really harsh, but also beautiful. And they are super psychedelic. And they have these layers of sounds and warped sounds and out of tune, but still, really amazing soundscapes. So we were really inspired by that. So we wanted to make something of our own, create our own stuff.
Did Skinny Puppy also affect your live performances because they can be extreme live?
No, we never did anything like that. No blood and no costumes or anything. So, but yeah, they're amazing live.
Where does the band name come from?
Yeah, we started. I think we called ourselves Deviate first, but so many bands were called Deviate, so it's like, okay, we have to change. So we took a name, Afterglow, but Afterglow was also used by many bands, so it was like, what the fuck? We have to find something that no one else is using. So Johan had read an article in Time magazine in, I think it's October 1994, which was about future religious wars, and the headline for that article was called Battle of the Future Buddhas. So he was like, we should take this name. And we were like, yeah, no one can be called Battle of the Future Buddhas but us. So we're gonna be unique now. And in a way, it sounds a little bit like Renounce of the Revolution. So, and it kind of fits the genre with Buddhas.
And what do you think? What are the future Buddhas battling for?
I don't know. Enlightenment, I don't know. We're not into wars. We don't want wars. So. But sure, I mean, the nighttime can be a struggle if you're dancing and it's dark and you have some harsh and strong night music. But no more wars, please.
Yeah. So you have released a compilation of really early tracks titled Digging Mud, which showcases your early production. How did that one come together, and what can you tell us about your earliest productions? How did you start writing those tunes?
Well, first, that compilation came together because we had so many tracks. We only had 2 releases when I released Digging Mud, I think. We had 2 albums released, but we had 100 tracks. So I just put those tracks together, 14 tracks or something, 8 tracks on the CD, but there's some bonus tracks as well. And I just mastered them and just wanted to release them because we had so much unreleased material and so many tracks were good. So I thought, why not release a CD? So I released it on Schlabbaduerst, or self-released. So it was just a fun thing to do. But and the way we started making, with very little equipment, we only had a few synthesizers, just one drum module, the drum station, or samples. So we had the Nord-lead synth and very little effects also, and a very bad mixer. So we just had to make do with what we had and try to save. I mean, we were young. We didn't have a job or an income or anything, so we just had to buy some kind of cheap synths and save up money and try to get a studio together. But we never really had a proper studio until we could move in with Subcodes. We had a proper studio, they rented a place and they had a proper mixer table and they had a TB303 and more effects and stuff. And that happened because Frederick, he was moving to Spain to study. So, they weren't using the studio at the time. So we put our gear inside their studio and we just, put them together. So we had twice the equipment and a bit better mixer so we could make better sounding music.
And how should we imagine this? Because you were quite a lot. So did you jam or everybody has their own roles or?
Yeah, it's usually me or Magnus who started making a track and had kind of an idea, and we weren't all 3 of us together always. It was usually someone who sat there and started the track and then the others joined in. If we started the track from scratch, it could involve some fighting actually and shouting, and because we were so good friends, so we were like, no, that's shit, what are you doing, get away from the computer, let me do this instead. And then you had to fight for your ideas. No, this is gonna stay. I like this. No. But generally, I was building the tracks. Johan made melodies and small details, and Magnus made some weird sounds. And he could also build the tracks and make have an idea that he wanted to, something he wanted to produce. But yeah, it was an interesting creative environment because we were such good friends that we can be completely open with the criticism and say exactly what we wanted. And of course, if something was good, it's like, oh yeah, keep that, more of that, you know. And we always wanted the tracks to evolve and to end in something, like to end in a climax. It was like, okay, now we have 8 bars of this, so let's go and make some change here, and then we have a break, and then we have a build-up, and then we have this big climax in the end where everything is just going crazy. And always imagining, like, if we were dancing, if we heard this on the dance floor, what would we be doing? So we made kind of the music that we wanted to hear ourselves and dance to ourselves.
Yeah, did you already start playing out the tracks as a live act or as a DJ set? Have you already started performing at parties at the time, or did that come later?
Yeah, we did. We played a few gigs, really bad ones, as an electronic act. And then we played like Deviate and Afterglow in Uppsala, in some student places. So we had a few gigs. But the first real one with Buddhas, I think, was in Denmark in 98, probably. But I DJ'd before that. I DJ'd in Goa and Thailand a few times. And we also made parties in Sweden in like 98, I think. So that's probably where it like started. And then when we released the Twin Shark Fins album, we got lots of interest from mainly Greece and Portugal. So we went there a lot.
Yeah, just wondering if you had like an Atari or a Commodore or something like that as the main sequencer at the time. I guess most people are using that.
Yeah, the Commodore first, but not like a sequencer, just a tracker.
Yeah.
And then pretty early on, we had the Atari 1040, some expanded memory. I think we have a hard drive of 40 megabytes or something like that. So we had to save everything on those diskettes that broke. And yeah. But the Atari was nice. We had it a long time, almost till the 2000s, I think.
So Battle of the Future Buddha's first tracks were officially released in 97. I think the first one is the track Filoti on the Boom compilation. And although this track is not that dark, but it already showcases somehow the rustling, hectic sound of the band. And the other release is the EP, the Domestic Bliss and Advancing Artwork. Domestic Bliss has this haunting melody that you guys later used in many songs. So how did you guys find your own sound, which was atypical and characterizing only the Buddhas?
Yeah. There was also a release on Superstring Records, I think maybe in 97 with Neuroglider. Basically, we started making dance music like Orbital and stuff, but then we found an interest in these warped out of tune sounds, and I think the Nord lead helped a lot because it had a lot of options where you can just warp the sounds and use portamento and slide and glide effects and make it slightly out of tune, which creates a really interesting atmosphere. And the stuff we heard on the parties were also, we perceived it as really psychedelic and warped and really weird. So obviously we weren't at the top of our minds. We were probably a bit stoned when we heard the music. So we were trying to create what we heard on the parties and do it in the studio. And we had no limitations because we have this background from the industrial music scene. So we just wanted to make some really we didn't set out to do unique music, like, no, we're going to be so unique and we're going to have our own style. It just happened. So we didn't plan it or anything.
So you just practically like these sounds and that's it?
Yeah. There's nothing, no secret to it or anything. No, nothing elaborate. It just happened.
I'm talking about this EP. I think it also shows the humor of the band. So tell me, what is an advancing artwork, please?
I don't know. I don't know. But there's a lot of jokes going around, really strange humor. So we don't take ourselves too seriously. I don't think that's a good idea. There's enough seriousness. I mean, we make pretty dark music, but it's always with a sense of humor.
Back then in the Swedish scene, was this already kind of a sound that started to evolve as a scene of its own, or did you also feel like it's a little bit different from what other Goa trance artists are making at the time?
Yeah, it was. The closest is the Örebro sound, I guess, with acts like Hux Flux and Logic Bomb. That's where we learned. That's where we went to the parties, and that's where we heard a lot of stuff. I mean, I remember hearing psycho disco in the forest of the first time, so that was super inspiring. But we made our own. Yeah, we made our own genre or subgenre in Uppsala, together with Kasol later and some other acts. In Örebro, they had a special sound with Little Blue Men, also stuff like that. And in Gothenburg, in Sweden, they have the spiral track sound, which is a bit more proggy. And in the south of Sweden, in Malmö, there's even more prog, like Tycon and what's this other band called? Can't remember. But anyway, so it differs a bit. There's not too much from Stockholm, which is funny. Yeah, it was different from each city, basically.
And how did you end up on a relatively underground Dutch label, Boom Records?
Yeah, we sent demo tapes or DATs to the English labels, the big ones, but I don't think they ever responded. So the Boom Records were the first to respond, and they were like super enthusiastic, and they wanted us to make an album, and they even paid us in advance. So we're like, yeah, sure, we're gonna have a release. That's awesome. So, and then we met those guys, and they organized this party that I talked about in Aarhus in Denmark as well. So that's where we met them. Yeah, we were just happy to have some releases.
So yeah, your first proper record, your first album was Twin Shark Fins that came out in '98.
Mm-hmm.
How do you remember the creation process of it? How did you guys work in the studio? Was it any different from the very early tracks? Was this already in the studio from Subclouds where you recorded those things?
It was actually before. We had some early versions, really bad versions, but we had some sounds, some samples that we used for like Neuroglider and some other tracks. So we got to rework some of those versions, but this was made already in '96 for most tracks. So we had the music in late '96, and that's when we made Domestic Bliss also. And then we went to Goa, and me and Magnus went traveling further on. And then when we got back home, we mastered everything in '97. But then there was like a waiting list for on Boom Records because they had a lot of releases, so that's why it wasn't released until '98. But we had the early versions, and then we remade them with the Subcodes equipment and could add like TB, well, not maybe that many TB-303s, but the SH-101, and make a much better mix and have a much better production overall, except for a few tracks that we produced at Magnus' parents' place without a mixer with an equalizer or anything. I think there's like 2 tracks that are made, or 3 tracks that are made in really poor conditions. So it was, it was a struggle for some tracks.
And why the title Twin Shark Fins?
That's a good question. We have a strange sense of humor, and at some point, there's also a guy, Robin, who was a part of Battle of the Future Buddhas for a while, and he had an apartment that we spent a lot of time in. He's a very good friend, and Magnus lived there for a while, and I even lived there for a while before we went to Goa in '96. And we were just, talking and making jokes and partying, and, so we were talking about something that would be super maximal. What is the most maximal thing you can do? And for some reason I was talking about, well, I want to be a guy parading around in a uniform, and I want to have a helmet with a shark fin on top, because that's super maximal. Well, okay, but what's even more maximal is to have 2 shark fins on your helmet. Twin shark fins. It's like, yeah, okay, that's twice as good. So it's just a stupid idea. But if you check the print on the CD, you see this helmet with the twin shark fins on top. And it's also something you can swim with, like a joke, like you're swimming around with a shark fin on your head, and people think there's a shark attacking. But then if you have twin shark fins, it's 2 sharks.
My second question, what's on the cover actually? Because I cannot figure
it out. The cover, I don't know. It's just early graphics from Twin Shark Fins, just an early graphics model. It looks like something underwater, and I like the color. I like the deep blue and deep blue and black. I think that fits the music really well.
I guess that's also connected to your weird humor, why it starts with the outro, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's very stupid. And that outro, if you listen, it has a part of the Jaws theme, like do 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 do.
Yeah.
We're tying it to the shark thingy.
Then your next album was Demonizer. Sounds more aggressive and a bit more ominous than Twin Shark Fins, but yeah, the title is very fitting indeed.
Yeah.
What is your opinion of that second album? Looking back at it, what comes to mind?
It took some time. It took 4 years from the previous release, and our music changed a bit. And we made Demonizer, which is well, it's more my track, really. I wanted to take things to the maximal. It's just a wall of sound, and that was produced quite early, so it also took some time before it got released. And then Johan had already met his the future mother of his children, so he kind of, and I think they got a child there as well, so he kind of dropped out to making music and touring. So it was me and Magnus who tried to make the album. But Magnus were more interested in, like, not proggy stuff, but he made some more minimal music. And we were not at all doing the same kind of music. So he made some tracks and I tried to change them, and he didn't like I was doing very much, and he wanted to make something different. He made some really nice track together with Frederick from South Coast at the time, called Flat Face. So it's not really an album. It's just a collection of songs that are not really fitting together because they're quite different. So it's not a very good album, I think, unfortunately. There's some good songs, but nah.
But I really love the titles on this one, especially. For example, Pride Time Slime, which is my favorite track, but also the Hippie Crack Panic Breakout or something like that. And also the Scooby-Doo meets the Flopmaster. And I actually checked the Scooby-Doo Wikipedia. There's no.
No, it's just, I don't know, just something that we made up completely. I don't think we had a track title. Sometimes we made the track titles first and like had a vision, like this track is supposed to sound like this and we need to have these sounds. So we made the track title first and then the track. But sometimes we just had to make something up on the spot also. And that's funny. Prime Time Slime is Magnus' track. It's a bit jazzy. I think it's a bit funky. So, and my tracks are more harsher and more industrial.
Your peers slowly left you from album to album, and Battle became a solo project. So how did that happen? And do you miss the other guys nowadays?
What can I say? Of course, but life happens. Magnus started working. He also got a relationship, and we were not drifting apart. We were still seeing each other and not going to parties that much. Magnus still went to play together with me up until maybe, I don't know, 2008 or something. But then he also got children, so, and I don't have children, so I can be married with the music instead. So that's just for practical reasons. I was the one who had the time to continue making music. But we're still very good friends. We're chatting almost daily, and Magnus sometimes made some tracks together with me, and Johan has contributed to 3 tracks on the new album. So it happens a few times that we meet, like not even once a year, but we meet and try to make some music.
The third release after that one is Master of Outhouse, which was a split album with Castle. Yeah. And it was released 8 years after Demonizer. So what happened there? What was the reason for the long wait? Eventually life happened, of course. There were a lot of changes.
Yeah, we were quite busy, or I was busy with the Schlabbaduerst releases. So we made quite a few releases there. So many tracks went to those releases, and I think we released something in Greece and stuff as well. But from 2005 to 2007, I played a lot of World of Warcraft, so I didn't like it. But in that album, I think Magnus has at least one track. We had a few tracks, and the label kind of contacted us and wanted us to make this split album, which was a nice idea because Battle of Future Buddhas and Casol, we work well together and the music goes well together. We play a lot of live gigs nowadays where we play this versus setup thing. So we play for 4 hours, 2 hours of Buddhas and Casol mixed together. 2 hours each.
Yeah, and how do you remember creating this split album? Some of the pedal tracks there are pretty banging. Did you have a concept for this, or did you just compile the tracks that you already have together, like same with Castle? Did you discuss what goes on to the album, or did he just compile his part on his own?
I'm not 100% sure. I think maybe we sent some tracks to the label and they picked it. Not 100% sure how that happened. It was basically, or maybe they just asked, can you send us the best tracks that you have right now? So just selected tracks that we already have. It wasn't produced specifically for the album, but it was more like, okay, we have these tracks, we can do something with it. Let's package it together. And then the 9th track on the album is a cooperation that we made together from Buddhas and Casal, this Church of New Age hippie disco shit.
The cover is also pretty interesting. Do you have any story about this one?
Yeah, the cover is really nice. Something happened when we mastered the music. It's always been a problem sending music to people who master the music, because they kind of want to put their own style on it, and sometimes they do things that you don't want them to do. I had a perfect experience with Demonizer. I went down to the Netherlands and I went with Boom Records to a guy who was super professional, really into the scene, who had not exactly the Goa trance scene, but the electronic music scene. And he had a really nice mastering studio, and he just listened to the music and he was like, okay, so you want this and this, and that's how you want it to sound. And he just enhanced everything, and he didn't put his own opinion on it. He was like, okay, so you want a lot of bass, fine. So he made some small adjustments, and that was perfect. I love that style. But when we sent the music for this album to mastering, I don't think we had a title yet for the album. But the first tracks, they came back and they were distorted and they sounded like shit. And we were like, what? What did this guy do? Because at that time, the people in the mastering business, they started looking at the music and not listening to it. Mm-hmm. So they can use a spectral graph, or whatever it's called, a spectral analyzer, and they can see the frequencies, and they can see if it looks good, if it's like below some values like 6 decibel or whatever. I don't know. And they wanted to have a good bit rate, and they want to have a good sound quality. But then if you listen to it, it sounded like shit. The hi-hats in one track, they were distorted. So that's when we decided that mastering, that's crap. So I just let Christer do the mastering nowadays from Casal. So there's this Metallica album called Master of Puppets, and we thought, okay, let's do something that tells the masterers to go to the toilet, basically. So an outhouse is a toilet, and the cover shows this big monster that's stopping a guy from going to the outhouse, from going to the toilet. So yeah, it's basically us dissing with that title and that cover.
I actually wanted to ask you about your partnership with Castle, because you had the project together, the Church of the New Age hippie shit, or disco shit. You also released the Splits album, and as you mentioned, Christer also mastered most of your records since then. So how did this collaboration come together?
We went to the parties in the 90s together, usually in the same car, and we made music together and listened to music, and we shared a lot of things. So they were good friends. So we made the parties together, and we made Schlabbaduerst together, and Christer was into the mastering side, so he gets to master the stuff. So it's just a natural thing to do, you know. And we think the same way in terms of music, that we want a heavy night and then a nice chill or psychedelic morning, and with more melodies. So it's a good combination.
Yes, so the next album was then Urban Legends, which was a pretty dark one with some more industrial touch. What's your opinion on that one? How do you remember that album coming together?
Yeah, I had to release it myself. We're sitting making some music in my headphones, basically for myself. And the way it sounds is because of my computer setup and the soft synths that I used. And I used a lot of compression. It was kind of a harsh sound that I would not produce today. There's some good tracks, but I have kind of destroyed them because they are like super compressed, and I don't know what to say. There's some interesting tracks. I made some remixes, but when that was made on my old computer, and I changed computer in 2015, and I'm still using the same setup and the sound card. So that changed my sound when I made the albums that come later, but this one was a bit the old computer was a bit limited in sound wise, like production wise as well, and I only used Cubase SX, a very old Cubase version. So I'm not super happy with the album. I think there's some good tracks, but it's like the cover also, it was printed too dark, unfortunately. It was a really nice cover by this guy in Ireland. So if you can make it brighter when you look at it, it looks really nice. But it came out too dark, and yeah, like I said, not super happy with it, but still played Body Hit and a few other tracks.
The next one is Everything, which is my secret favorite. What's your opinion on that one?
Yeah, that's starting to take a different turn. I'm producing in the new computer some tracks. And I also discovered the old school again. I was listening to, I re-found my cassette tapes from the 90s with Mark Allen, and I listened a lot to those more slower tracks, and there's some really harsh stuff on this Everything album as well, and it's released on Chronicle, Mystery Records, and Darko from Chronicle, he really encouraged me to make this album, and he really liked the stuff, so that was really nice collaboration. But the last track, The Infinite Process, is my first old school track, so to speak. I'm pulling down the BPM, and I just played around, and I was like, oh wait, this sounds like old school Infinity Project, so let's continue that, and let's see where that takes me. So I took it down to like 136 BPM or something, and I found like a new old style. So it was an interesting process to make that album. I enjoyed it a lot.
And then you joined Suntrip and released 2 more goish sounding records. So then you just explain, why did you change the style a bit to a more...
Yeah, that's because I found these old cassette tapes, and Suntrip had released an album with Casal, which didn't sell very well, so they were a bit hesitant to release Battle of the Future Buddhas, and they also thought that most of my tracks on Urban Legends and everything and other tracks, they were too monotonous and maybe too industrial and too harsh. And I didn't set out to make like a soft album, but I wanted to produce in a different style. I didn't want to use compression, and I wanted the old school sound, and that means that you have a focus on the melodies. There is still a bass, obviously, but you don't put the bass, the kick drum and the bass in the foreground. You let it be there in the back, and then you enhance the melodies, the mid frequencies instead. And I wanted to get rid of the heavy compression that I used on Urban Legends, and I wanted to have a more old school sound. So I produced in a different way. And then, even if there are some not dark or harsh tracks, but some melancholic tracks, it sounds a bit softer. And I wanted to make more stuff, maybe like this album, The Life Behind the Sun, the first one on Suntrip, it reminds me more of the digging mud stuff. And Magnus was part of one track also. And I just wanted to make more melodies and get away a little bit from the dark side, get away from the forest music that was not very inspiring, and all this dark side crap, basically. So I wanted to get out into the light and do some more melodic stuff. And of course it fits Suntrip better.
And what about the next one, the Songs from Forgotten Memory? Yeah,
that's my best work. Maybe together with the last the album I released now, but this one I really tried to make something different production wise. I really pushed myself to play melodies, like play them with my hands, not just click in the computer, but just sitting there jamming and playing in a different way, because I have made a lot of tracks, made a lot of albums, and it's like, okay, I have to push myself and force myself to play something different. So I just tried to make different productions and arrangements and choose some sounds that I don't always use. I mean, you can still hear that it's Battle of the Future Buddhas, but it's definitely a different production style. It's much more, it has more space, more diversity, and more room to breathe. And yeah, I'm super happy with the production. I spent a lot of time with it, and I think everything finally came into place. Like, there's not one sound that I think is too loud or too low. I think everything is pretty much perfect, and that's very rare.
Yeah.
So, yeah, super happy with that one.
So that was basically the process. You started out with Suntrip, then the second album was almost perfect, and then now we are at the latest album, which is Cause, Principle, and One Eternal.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration behind the album and the title? Where does it come from?
The music, I just wanted to continue even more on the old school path, going back to 94. And I was thinking that if Goa Trance had not gone into full-on music in 98, 99, what could it have sounded like? So I made some futuristic tracks like Chrome and Silver and Apex, not Apex, but yeah, a few tracks that I was thinking this is more futuristic. So I wanted to go a step forward, but I also took like really big care of using very old school sound sculpting. Basically, I'm distorting a lot of sounds, and they used a lot of distortion in 94, 95, and it makes even the lead sounds, they are more crunchy, and they have like a glittering effect, kind of. And it's a really soft and yet interesting and very, special sound. So I was for this album, I was really into the production and the sound, just the sound engineering thing side of it. But I also went many tracks are super old school on this one. So I came up with a catchphrase that it's old school music from 2024. I was really happy with that one because it sounds really, really old, but in a good way, because I think the best music was made in 95, probably. And the title, I was having like an open discussion on my Facebook page, like where should I go? I was first into dualism, like Goa Trance has two sides, the night side and the morning side. So I wanted to make something like that because I had this double album, and I wanted to make one darker side and one light side. So I was first into dualism, but then I got stuck on Wikipedia and read about old Greek philosophers like mystics, and also some from the medieval era. So I came across this idea that everything is one, everything is interconnected, and that's also one idea that I really enjoy. So and I found this poem by a guy, Giordano Bruno, one Italian philosopher, scientist, who made this beautiful poem, and the cause, principle, and one eternal is the first line from that poem. So it's the name of one of his poems, and the poem is also printed on the album.
Tell us a little bit about the cover, which was painted by your sister, right? So I think it's really, really good and really atypical, which is also really nice. So how did that come together, and how does it symbolize the album for you?
I wanted to make something that was not typical Goa Trance, like not the I hate the AI style of graphics and music, and I think AI shouldn't touch anything creative. They should do practical things and help us be creative instead. So I wanted to make something human, for sure. And there were some images from the medieval period where they paint in this really naive style, like they paint every leaf on the trees, and they paint all the stars in the sky, like these 5-pointed stars in a very naive style. And because they have, in the medieval period, they haven't really mastered the art of painting yet. So they're trying to do something, and the perspectives are a bit off. So I wanted to do something in that medieval style, which also fits the medieval poem from Giordano Bruno. And my sister paints kind of in a naive style already, and she's into symbolism and the mysticism and the spirituality. So I thought it was just the perfect match to have her paint in her style together, mixed with medieval naive style. So she thought it was really interesting too. She usually charges a lot of more money for her paintings than what we pay her from Suntrip, but she thought it was a bit revitalizing to have this project to work on, and it gave her some inspiration and ideas also. So it turned out really well, and I'm really happy with it. And she also added a lot of symbolism, and I'm not fully aware of all those things. Maybe we should let her write an article about it and explain something, or we just leave it to be mystical and leave it to people's imagination. But yeah, it's really loaded with symbols and meaning. It's very, very, very nice indeed.
It's too CD, and I was a bit worried that it may be too overwhelming to listen in one setting, but actually it's not. So I was really surprised that you can listen to it. However, I do not feel that much difference between the two CDs. Indeed, the second has a bit more sinister melodies, let's put it that way. But I don't hear that difference that Suntrip put out. So I want to ask you, how did you sort them out to the two CDs, and how does it represent the night and day?
Yeah, I had to change that because I realized that it's not a proper night and not a proper morning or day side. So that's why I call it dawn and dusk. So it's kind of twilight on both, because in the first CD, I think there's more melodies on the first one. And I think it's some more uplifting tracks, but there's also some melancholic stuff, and it's not dark, but it's not bright either. So it's in the twilight. And on the other one, there's some more harsher sounds and some faster BPMs. But yeah, there's some melodies as well. So it's not completely dark. So you're absolutely right there. It's not completely different. It's more like two sides of the same coin, I guess. So. But I think when I look at the track list, I think none of the tracks could change CD, really. I had a good cooperation with Joske there, who made the track order because he's the DJ. So he was like, he made the track order, and I think that worked out really well.
There's already a nice description of basically every track on Facebook. So we don't want to go into all the tracks of the album here, but just name a few of your favorites. If you have to choose like 3 tracks, which would be the best ones, you think?
Oh my God, that's really difficult. I just have to say first that, it's 18 tracks, and it was really difficult to produce all those. And I wanted to make them different, all the tracks, so that they would stand out on their own. And it's funny because the last album, it got a lot of praise, but I wonder if this one didn't get even more praise, that people think it's one of the best albums ever produced. But I think that it's more, probably because it's more accessible. I didn't work as much with all the tracks as on the last album, which might have been a good thing. I'm not saying they are simple tracks, but they are kind of perhaps more easily accessible and very melodic. So, but it's very hard to choose. I'm super happy with Strange Fantasy because of the sample and the beat and the sounds. It really sounds old school. Also, Data Lab Slad. I'm super happy with the atmosphere in that one because it sounds super old school. And it was just what I wanted to achieve. And there's if you listen closely in headphones, there's some small effects. There's like a dub echo going from left to right really slowly. So, and I really love the rhythm of it also. I don't have an open hi-hat in that one, which is really nice for a change. And then I really enjoy Evermore, which is the harshest and fastest track on the album, because it's like a dark version of Doof, Let's Turn On, like a night music version on that one. So, and that one started out as a joke. I was just going to make this super boring full on track with that kind of bass line, no? But I can't stand that bass line. I think it's so boring. It's not even a bass line. It's just boring. So I was like, no, I can't do this. I can't make a track even as a joke. So I started messing around with some delays for the bass, and then it started to get this really weird and interesting rhythm. And it sounds a bit like death metal kick drums, like this double kick drums, bass drums. So yeah, I started working on it and found this intro sound and made some equalizing sweeps in the mixer. And then it's like, oh, this sounds like Doof, which is always a good thing. Yeah. So I'm really happy with the atmosphere on that one as well.
Yeah. And for this album, Johan also returned for a couple of tracks. How did that come together, and how was the collaboration with him this time?
Well, it's just that Johan gets bored and it's like, let's do something. And I'm like, yeah, come over, make some music. We'll have a few beers, make some music. So he was a bit driving there. He was interesting. He was inspired. He wanted to make music. So he came to my place and just wanted to work on some tracks. Most of the tracks were already in a not completely finished situation, but so he could like do some things on broken bass and Flume Rider. We added some rhythms and stuff. But Chemical Imbalance, that one we made actually 2 years ago, and that one we made from scratch. We started out together and we made this really soft track. So that's a 50-50 collaboration. So, but they took 2 years for us to finish it. We had this in this kind of okay state, but then he came back and was like, yeah, but we have to finish. We have to add some more sounds. We have to add maybe some more rhythms. So let's just finish it. So.
I actually wanted to ask you about that track because I think it captures when you first smoke really well. It's like
I said the wrong name. Yes, I mean Centurion. That's the one I made with John.
Okay, because I'm talking about Chemical Imbalance here. So it's similar to, for example, LSD from Hallucinogen. I think that captures the LSD trip really well, but this one really well captures smoking weed. So how did you come up?
I didn't smoke weed when I did it, so I don't know. The samples, I mean, I have a lot of drug samples on this album just because it's funny. I sampled a lot of movies, and this one has samples from THX, George Lucas' early movie. I don't know. It just happened. But all the tracks except for The King of Kings, which I made in 5 hours. Most of the tracks were made over a long time, many studio sessions where I wanted to make more and more melodies and have a change. So this one has a lot of different parts to it. But it's just that I strive for making something interesting and something evolving. So it was not that I wanted to make something about chemical use or anything. That's just, the name is just from the sample basically that I used in the track.
So it's a coincidence then that it feels like that.
Maybe it's you.
Yeah. Exactly. My other favorite is To Hell. So what can you tell about that?
That started out as a Dimension 5 track. There is this preset on a synth called Silent. That sounds a bit like, I had to change it a bit, so I didn't use the preset because that's, you can't use a preset. But it sounded a lot like Dimension 5, and I like Dimension 5, so why not, But then I wanted to switch it up a bit and change that arpeggio so it goes faster. And I just wanted to make something interesting. I mean, it started out maybe more as a morning track, but then I had this more strong distorted TB303, so it becomes more of a night track in the end. And I just, wanted to make a powerful track, basically.
And it's very fitting that you are actually playing at the same party as Dimension 5 in a month from now in Budapest.
Let's see if he says something about. I don't think I'm gonna play this track though. It would be interesting to play it for him and see how he.
I think the album showcases something that I usually miss from nowadays Goa trance, and that is the mystical, captivating, esoteric melodies. A lot of nowadays Goa trance, they use the typical elements, the psychedelic sounds, but I miss this atmosphere. So how do you achieve it? What's the secret of these melodies? Tell us.
I think melodies are super important. Even in the dark night tracks, there has to be a melody. If it's not a melody involved, it's just a production. And so many tracks are just productions now. You have this one-note bass line, and then you have just sound effects, and you're not even playing a melody. But for me, that's not something that you can remember. It's just something that passes by. If you have a melody, then it's a song, you know. So I think it's super important to work with the melodies, and it often takes a lot of time. So I'm working a lot with the melodies, and I'm often playing them on a keyboard and then making variations, and the melodies tell a story. So you need melodies for sure, and then you have to put them together with some not ambient sounds, but you have to make this atmosphere that you're talking about to give them a nice environment, and you have to focus on the mid frequencies to make those melodies shine. And you can distort them a little bit, and you can add a lot of effects, but you still need to hear the melodies. If you have just a big kick drum and the bass line there in the front, you don't get the melodies, and yeah, it's just boring. I just want to make fun, interesting, melodic stuff.
Is there any tool or any instrument, any favorite instrument in your studio now that really inspires you, or anything that has become like a part of the process how you are writing music nowadays?
I don't have a lot of equipment. I have a keyboard, big one that I'm playing on, which is also a synth. But I'm not using hardware much. I'm using soft synths. But getting a new soft synth is always inspiring. And I signed up for the Roland Cloud thingy, the subscription, where you get these 60 synths from Roland or something. And for me, the Jupiter 8 is just amazing. At one track on the previous album, the Pitch Bend track, and also Into Heaven, has these amazing Jupiter 8 sounds. And you can open the cutoff frequency there really slowly, like Hallucinogen does. And it just sounds fantastic. So that Jupiter 8 is super inspiring. And I'm also using like a really simple tool from the Quadrafuzz effect in Cubase, which is a tape distortion thing, which adds a little bit of harmonic distortion to the sounds, which makes it sound old school, like it comes from a cassette tape. And it really works wonders with the sounds. It sounds like it's from a cassette tape from the 90s. And you get that nice atmosphere. So those are really inspiring. And the Juno 60 and some analog synths that you can tweak, and you can make the sounds glide around, and you can change the oscillators a little bit so they're slightly out of tune. And yeah, it's funny because you can change the condition of the synths so they actually sound a bit worse, but in my ears it sounds, sound quality wise, but in my ears it's just better.
And what do you want to tell through your music? So why do you create music today?
I just want to make some music that I want to listen to myself. I listen a lot to my own music actually, and I'm enjoying it, but at the same time I'm listening to what can I do next, and what should I do different. But we made dance music. We made music that we wanted to hear, and it's a bit of focus on the audience, and like how are people gonna react to this on the dance floor, which is always really interesting the first time you play a track. So it's made for myself, for people at the party, and then when you make an album, you also have to make music that you can listen to in headphones and just or have in the background or so as well. But at the same time, I want to make a good pop song, because Goa trance is pop music, and I want to make the perfect melody, which is impossible, but it's something to strive for. So it's an eternal quest to make that perfect track. And at the same time, Goa trance and the psychedelic scene has always been about getting together regardless of where you're from, who you are, your race or sex or religion, and just getting together and having a good time. And I want to make people into freaks, because freaks are friendly and peaceful. And I think the more people that basically drop acid and go to Goa trance parties, the more peaceful the world would be. So that's a kind of mission also.
Battle of the Future Boots has always stayed in the underground, while other contemporary acts became big names in the scene. So what do you think? What's the reason behind that? You came late, or it's not catchy as other acts, or?
The reason was kind of a choice as well, to play the smaller parties with a nice, friendly organization, not organizations, but just private people who wanted to make a party, and not go to these big festivals and play, because I haven't really enjoyed the huge festivals. CNA is super nice, but that's like the biggest I want to play at. I don't want to play on a big scene, be a big name like that. I enjoyed the underground. In the beginning, techno was faceless. You didn't have any artist photos, and the DJ didn't matter much either in Goa trance, and I like that. I think the most important people on the party, they are the dancers, not the acts playing or the DJs. Of course, the music matters, obviously, but I try to make commercial music, but I feel sick from it, so it doesn't work. and during like 2000, 2002, 2004, and up until Urban Legends, the music was pretty harsh also. And we tried to play in places where they play this electronic body music and industrial music, but they thought it was too much techno, and people in the Goa trance scene thought this is too much industrial music. So for a while, Buddhas didn't really fit in anywhere. So we had to make our own label also. So it hasn't been liked by a lot of people, but I'm really happy with what I have achieved, and I have released a lot of albums, and I played in 5 continents and in some super nice parties, and I got to make a lot of friends. So. And I had a long career also. It's not like I made just one album in the 90s and then I go touring and play the same stuff. I have 200 tracks to choose from, and every live act is different from the next one. So, I mean, it's a good thing if you want to stay in the scene. You don't like blow up and explode, and you don't get a big ego, and don't get into abusing cocaine or anything. So I still have my health and my sanity. So I'm kind of.
So when you play at a party, you don't need a limousine in your rider, for example.
No, I try to write a rider sometimes, but I never get the stuff I'm asking for. So. No, it's very simple. Just a clean place to sleep, and a sober driver, and get some.
So yeah, you mentioned, and we discussed, you have a huge catalog of tracks with Battle of the Future Buddhas already. Is there like a secret favorite? If you had to pick one track that you really like, but you don't play it as much, or a track that you always have to play, what would those be?
Yeah, I always have to play Domestic Bliss, because it always works, and it's always kind of surprising because the sound is so weird. It's so screechy and noisy and warped, but I'm really happy with that, and it's 12 minutes long, and it doesn't feel like 12 minutes long. I don't enjoy playing Neuroglider anymore. I think it's a bit too repetitive and a bit annoying, but I really enjoy Transportamental, and Lord of the Dance is a fantastic track. Super happy with it, but the production is awful and it hurts people's ears, so I can't play that one too much. But then there's a few old gems like Babes and Barbas always work. It has a really funky, funny party atmosphere. So yeah, there's a lot of tracks, but it's good that there are many to choose from.
And what was the most memorable set you played live, and why?
No, I don't know. There's been so many. There's been many in Greece that have been fantastic. We played a beach party in Portugal in '98. That was fantastic. It was super nice atmosphere. It was like being in Goa. And of course, it's been nice to play on CNA. Played in in Japan in 2002. That was fantastic also. But there's been a lot. I can't pick just one set, actually.
What has Goa trance added to your life?
A lot. I mean, I got to travel the world and I met a lot of people. I have so many friends in many countries. So it's been fun. And the music, it's been fantastic. Yeah, I got to see the world. Yeah, I love the music, so I listen to it so much. I'm writing this top 10 list now on my Facebook page, and so that's just really fun too.
Yeah, you just came out with Teleport, I think, just before this interview, and I read it, and and everything is in that track that this style represents, at least to me.
I know. It's amazing. And it's so funny because, I mean, it's still so interesting because I had these DAT tapes from the 90s. And like I said, I still discovered tracks on them. And I sit listening on YouTube and I found these old tracks. And it's like, why have I never heard this one? It's from 95. I should have heard it, after 30 years. And I spent time on Discogs searching different labels and, so this guy, he was co-producing with that guy on this project, and you're checking it's like, wow, this is good stuff. But then you can't find it. Then you have to order a vinyl for 130 euro or something. And that's just out of the question. And then you can listen to Bandcamp and you have labels putting up their old stuff there. So you can spend hours listening to different artists and labels, and you find something new that is old but it's new for you. Yeah, it's just so interesting.
Was there a greatest moment or a favorite memory of a Goa party or a festival, something that really sticks out and comes to your mind when somebody says, oh, Goa parties, they are so great?
Well, when you look at the movies that people film with their cameras, and you're watching different parties like clubs, techno, trance, house. When you check Goa trance, the dance is always the wildest and most intense. So I think it's the best party in any electronic scene at all. But for me, I mean, the parties in Örebro in Sweden, they were amazing. Such great music. But there's one moment when I really got goosebumps, and that was in Goa when I wrote about this track on Facebook also. The Ranger track from Hallucinogen. And I remember hearing it on that party. And then in the morning, the music stopped because they hadn't paid the people, the police enough. So it was like, no, you have to shut this party down. That was just a thing that they wanted more bribes and more money. And they played this one in Goa, this party, and everyone was just standing around there in the morning, come on, we want more party, we want to dance, everyone is still having a lot of energy. And they had this discussion with the cops, I guess, and then they paid the right people and they got to start the music again. And when they played the first track, everyone was just standing up, cheering and screaming. And then I really got goosebumps. That was so amazing. That was so powerful. So that was a cool moment.
The Battle of the Future Boot has made an impact on the forest scene. For example, you can clearly hear that on the Durango album, they were listening to a lot of Buddhas. So what do you think of this and that Parvati style of forest sound?
I really love Durango. I think they really took music in to another dimension. They have some fantastic sounds that I don't understand how they made, and super clean and nice productions. So Durango is super nice, and there are a few acts in the forest scene, but that's not really forest music. For me, forest music is something you play in the forest where you have no walls for the music to bounce on. So you can use a lot of more effects, and you can make really psychedelic sounds. But forest, what they call forest today, is too fast, doesn't have any melodies, it's not very inventive, every track sounds the same, it's just super boring. So I don't know, Battle of the Future Buddhas don't play forest anymore. Maybe we did, but we're not part of that scene at all now. It's just something really strange that happened.
Do you think there was any particular moment in the scene when this started to go downhill? What was your favorite time period when you were thinking that maybe this forest style is still nice? Was there a shift happening there?
I was actually getting bored with the scene already in 1998 because then you had a full-on starting with this. And everything wanted to sound like GMS, and the first tracks from GMS were interesting, but then it was mainly shit, to be honest. In 95, 96, you could go to a party and you didn't hear one boring track. You just had to stay on the dance floor. So but then of course there were some more good releases after 98, obviously, and more interest. I never kind of liked the forest scene because it's been too repetitive and not enough uniqueness and not enough creativeness, and I don't understand it. And the dark side, don't even mention dark side. It's like, what? Why are they playing the same track for 8 hours?
Battle of the Future Buddhas is basically considered as one of the originators of the Uppsala sound. Could you describe how this is different from like other Goa trance sounds or psytrance sounds? What made it special? What could be the uniqueness of this?
It's a more industrial vibe, I guess, and also together with Casal, who are making the same kind of almost a psychotic sound with lots of effects and warp sound, out of tune sounds, and like strange atmospheres. Of course, a lot of music is strange, but kind of harsh and industrial, I guess. That's the uniqueness. And there's also a guy called Soon who is making a similar kind of music, and almost all the artists on Schlabbaduerst are part of the Uppsala sound. Subcoast is also from Uppsala, and they have a strong focus on melodies, but it's not exact. They are more like the Israeli sound, I guess. But we have some collaborations there where we think the same way as well. In Örebro, they sometimes think our music sound like a bee, like a wasp, like zzz. We have a lot of this sound, and I like that sound. So there's a lot of that in the music.
And how are the legendary Uppsala parties?
They were small parties. We didn't. They're free parties also, so we charge nothing. There's no ticket. You have to bring everything. There's no bar. It was just a few years that we made them, just in the forest, just rented a small sound system and played our own music, and very friendly, very nice people, very good atmosphere, of course, very good music that we thought ourselves. So
I saw some pictures.
I mean, we found a very nice spot to have the party, like in the middle of the forest. The forest is the decoration and the backdrop. And if you put lights, that's very easy to do. You can put the light at the bottom of the tree, so you can like light up the forest. That's very nice. But the nights are very short in Sweden in the summer, so it's usually light most of the time. So you don't get to use many strobes or lighting effects, UV lights and so on.
If someone wants to get to know this style more, what tracks or albums would you suggest for them to listen to?
The Uppsala sound?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they should probably start with Twin Shark Fins, I guess, and then go to Casal and listen to Ghost Story, or they could listen to Casal's new album, Folklore, and my last albums as well on Sun Trip, of course, which is a bit more accessible. For me, like what I do is I check Discogs and then I go through all the releases there and try to find something good. It takes some time because there's, 8, 9 albums now? So it's going to take a few hours.
Mm-hmm. You also run your own label, Schlabbaduerst Rekkords. How did you start it, and what was the motivation? And what does the label mean?
Good question. The motivation was that no one wanted to release our music, so we had to do it ourselves. So it's like, okay, screw you, we're gonna do this in our own way. And it's the same thing as Twin Shark Fins, just joking around with a name and just cracking jokes and making weird sounds. Schlabbaduerst doesn't mean anything. It's just powerful sound like bam or slam or something, only longer. But apparently Schlabba in German means shit or poo, and Durst could be first. So it's like, are you thirsty for shit? But, and if we had known that it meant that in German, maybe we would have picked the name anyway. So it's a bit a punk rock attitude, like in your face.
Yeah.
We don't care. And we have this distorted logo as well, which is a bit cracked. It's not polished or nice, but it's cool.
And it's interesting to me that if you had your own label and you had your own previous works released there as well, why did you choose, or how did the collaboration come to release the Buddha's albums, the last 3 albums on Suntrip?
Well, I've been a friend with Joske for a long time. He's been a big fan of Twin Shark Fins, and I wanted to get away a bit from the forest scene and the darkness, and I enjoyed what Suntrip was doing, many good releases. So I just asked him if they wanted to release an album with me. And I mean, Joska's always been a fan, and Caroline also, and they've been playing my music, and we've been playing at the same parties. I've been going to Belgium like at least once a year. So it was kind of natural, I guess. And I took a step away from the dark side and made more melodic stuff that I felt, okay, this will fit on Suntrip. And they had a lot to say on that album. Like they wanted me to change a few things and working together, and they were really happy with it. So with these last albums, they haven't said too much, like just continue doing what you're doing. So that's cool. But I just felt that this music would fit for Suntrip, so it was a good match.
He just released on Schlabbaduerst the folklore CD from Kassel. I think you already run out of the first batch, but still, as a label manager, well, it's tricky because I already have the CD, but sell it to me. So why should people listen to this?
Because it's unique and it has some fantastic atmosphere. If you're interested in forest atmospheres and like tales from other times and eras, I think Kassel has something otherworldly and something that is like time stands still. There's something medieval about their music also, because they've gone into this folk music kind of thing, and they're using these violins and stuff, and it's just they haven't released an album in a long time, so it's just 18 tracks that are super nice to listen to. So if you want something unique with nice melodies, nice atmospheres, and just some magic, you should definitely buy that album.
And you've already mentioned Kassel's album Ghost Story. Are there any plans to maybe make it available digitally or release it on Bandcamp or somewhere?
It's not available digitally? That's really stupid. We should definitely put it up on Bandcamp then. Okay, yeah, I have to check that. We're probably not printing it again, but it should definitely be digital. Okay, that's one thing for me too.
All right, then closing the interview. So what can we expect from you in the future? And you're going to play in Budapest in about a month, and then also in the summer. So what will be the differences between those sets? What do you prepare?
Yeah, I always play different sets because I have to do it for my own sake, and I have to have something to do on stage with mixing. And so what you can expect is always to have new versions of this music, like live versions, and always different sets. And I'm gonna play a lot in the summer. I'm gonna play in Sweden, I'm gonna play in Serbia, I'm gonna play in Denmark, I think, and on Uppsala and a few other places. Might be going back to Israel now if the situation becomes a bit calmer also. But music-wise, I'm gonna play this. I mean, I have 200 tracks to choose from, and I often try to make interesting sets and compositions, and I mix 2 tracks together often to find some variations. And I like making live versions as well and adding sounds. But music-wise, I haven't started my computer to make music in 3 months. Now I just want to make ambient music, like long, slow ambient tracks. I want to make a green album about natural stuff like plants and leaves and stuff. Organic. I want to make organic ambient music. Like long and slow, no beats. That's what I want to do. Just chill. Music-wise. For parties, it's going to be lots of energy.
And that was our interview with David. Check the Buddha's album on the Sun Trip and the Castle on Schlabbaduerst Rekkords. You can find both of them on Bandcamp.
Thanks for listening, people. If you enjoyed the podcast, hit the like button and be sure to subscribe for more. If you have any ideas, questions, leave a comment or messages on Facebook. Cheers.